Final Fantasy XIV hot takes, you have them, we're here to react to them. I asked for your hottest, your spiciest takes about Final Fantasy XIV, and you provided me with a veritable smorgasbord. So let's dive right on into this feast, shall we? Hello everyone, I am Jmulls, and let's begin. We have at Mr. Cool 9090 who says, I don't know how hot of a take this is, but like, I think this expansion is going to be looked back more favorably than it is being seen now. And not because I think next expansion is going to be worse, but because like, I think it just needs to not be the brand new thing for people to look at everything with a lens of this content is amazing / terrible. This is a phenomenon we kind of see with a lot of things over time, where when it's fresh and new, a lot of the loud discourse surrounding it is that people don't like it and that it's hated. Then the next thing comes out and people go, you know, maybe it wasn't that bad. And then the next thing comes out and people go, you know what, I actually kind of like that thing. Personally speaking, I think unless Point 3, 4, and 5 main story wise keep up the quality that I enjoyed from Point 2, I don't really see my opinions of Point 0 and Point 1 ever really changing. I think for a lot of people though, it's a combination of them not liking the story as it is right now alongside the actual gameplay and the content cadence, but also a lot of people don't know if this is just going to be the norm moving forward or if the game is actually going to change and get better in the future, at least for those people. There's a lot of people that got into the game for the story of A Realm Reborn through Endwalker and that were greatly disillusioned with what was provided with Dawntrail. Now, I was one of those people for a little bit. There were still elements of Point 0 and Point 1 that I liked. However, it was going in a direction that I didn't find particularly appealing or appetizing when it comes to what I want to consume out of a story. Point 2 was a massive course correction for what I was interested in, what I wanted to see out of the game. So if the game keeps going in that direction, I'll be happy moving forward, at least when it concerns the story. But for a lot of people, they need more than that. They want to be wowed just as much as they were back in that Hydaelyn and Zodiac arc. And yeah, it had its down points as well, but I think the low point and the average point for Dawntrail was lower than I would argue any of the previous expansions outside of like maybe A Realm Reborn, but even then thematically I gravitated to A Realm Reborn more than I did Dawntrail, and I imagine I'm not alone in that. But like right now there's a lot of uncertainty about where the future of this game is going to go. Are they going to make a bunch of actual systemic changes to the game and its core design philosophy? Will the storytelling get better? Will the aesthetics of the game go back in a direction that a lot of people got super invested in back in that Hydaelyn and Zodiac arc, as opposed to what Dawntrail is currently providing? There's a lot of questions in the air for a lot of people out there, and I think if the game does go in a genuine better direction from here on out, we will see more people probably soften up their impressions to Dawntrail because there's no longer that concern about the future direction of the game. Again, in this hypothetical future here. Look, I come from World of Warcraft and I come from Halo. I am well experienced with people being very negative to a thing as it's currently out, and then down the line, general sentiment shifts towards people being more appreciative of what happened there. I see takes all the time, well, all the time. Every now and then, in a blue moon, I see people actually praise Halo 5, despite the fact, in my opinion, it's one of the worst games ever made, at least in regards to what it should have been. But that's kind of the deal with the internet. There's so many people, especially people that are playing these games, that if you want someone that holds any one opinion, you can probably find them. It may just take a bit of digging, or they can be really loud about it. I think it's also partially a situation, right, where when we are a few games out of something happening, and conversation about that one particular time period has largely kind of died down a lot, the takes of people going, oh, actually that thing that people loved, I hated, or that thing that people hated, I actually loved, are kind of louder because the average white noise in the community discussion has died down a lot. I don't really see my opinions of, say, Point 0 and Point 1 really changing, but I can see my appreciation for Point 2 and the stuff with Sphene in Point 1 and Point 0 rising depending upon what they do with that character in the future. When it comes to the overall content cadence and the content we've had in Dawntrail, I don't really see people's opinions about that changing. You either love it or you're gonna hate it. I think for a lot of people, they just want to shake up more than anything. They want to be excited about the game again. Next up, we have at FlameKing91, who says, one big problem Final Fantasy XIV has is that it caters to normies/people with lesser brain matter. The whole point of MMORPG since the beginning of time was fantasy world and the challenges of said world. When the game is baby-proof and the classes are illiterate-proof, it kills all motivation to grow, because you don't grow. You are given everything. The game as a whole have become Endwalker relics. I don't agree with this. I think this is putting the blame on the wrong thing for the overall issues Final Fantasy XIV has right now. A lot of people will say that the game either caters too much to normal people, / casual people, / also people of lesser skill level, or the game caters way too much to the hardcore Raider demographic, and that there's nothing for the casual market. I think the biggest issue plaguing Final Fantasy XIV game design overall, and this comes into play not just for the content but also the jobs, they play it way too safe. And they don't make it, at least for me, to where when you're hitting your buttons, it feels particularly engaging or gives you that rush where you're going, oh, hell yeah, dude. It's one of the reasons I have actually gone tank in Dawntrail, because I still get that feeling to some degree with some of the jobs, like Warrior, for instance. But there isn't a single DPS in this game that I've played where I'm like, I want to spend a lot of time learning and getting better at this, because I'm just simply not enjoying the buttons I'm pressing that much. I may enjoy them for a little bit, but nothing that's particularly sticky for me. And I don't think simply making the content or the jobs harder rectifies that root issue of the buttons themselves not being fun to press. It's a bit of a core issue that I have with Final Fantasy XIV's design overall that I never actually expect to be fixed or changed in the future, because it's just the type of game Final Fantasy XIV is, and it's a matter of you kind of have to live with it. A lot of the times when I press a button, the animation takes way too long, and the effect of that button press takes way too long to go out, so it doesn't feel snappy or rewarding for me. That doesn't mean that I can't enjoy job design, or that I haven't enjoyed jobs in the gameplay in Final Fantasy XIV before. It just means it can be really hard for the game on the whole to hit my strike zone, at least nowadays. And I don't think that is rectified or solved by making the jobs easier or even making them harder and more complicated. And like I said before, I think one of the biggest issues plaguing Final Fantasy XIV design right now is sheer repetition more than anything. I think Final Fantasy XIV just simply needs new stuff and a breath of fresh air blown into it, not just throwing out the same exact formula, but you make it a little bit harder. I don't think that solves anything for the majority of people. I think Fork Tower is a great example of this, actually. It's like, that is a piece of hard content in the game, but people, a lot of them, just didn't want to do it. They didn't want to deal with the headache of actually getting into the Fork Tower to begin with, nor dealing with it once they're actually in there. And I think the clear count overall that they've revealed with the live letter shows that. It's not a matter of content or the game being hard or easy. It's a matter of the content you are interacting with and interfacing with being fun and engaging. And the problem with that is that people just simply find different things fun and engaging. That doesn't mean it's a 50-50 split on every single thing, but it does mean that some content that some people may find uninteresting, other people will find interesting, and vice versa. There'll be content that some people absolutely love and adore that a lot of other people will simply never want to do or stomach. I think one of the biggest issues plaguing not just Final Fantasy XIV design, but a lot of MMO design can be that they overcomplicate things, or they put up too many layers of friction for no real reason, because the people that engage in that friction feel as if it adds to the experience, when in actuality it's just kind of an annoying thing that's off-putting. Now, I want to be clear about this. That doesn't mean all friction is bad. That's not what that means at all. And in a game, you need to have that texture. You need to have some level of friction. But when a lot of people came over from World of Warcraft to Final Fantasy XIV, one of the biggest things a lot of people liked, no runbacks in fights, and dungeons and raids. For a lot of people, that was a wake-up call when they started playing Final Fantasy XIV. They just, myself included, they simply didn't like anymore wasting all that time running back to their corpse, or trying to find the entrance to the dungeon or the raid to walk back in to respawn, and then running all the way back to where they were. It was just a giant time sink. It was fiction that didn't really add to the experience overall in terms of making a more fun play session. For a lot of people, or a lot of loud people online, they view any type of friction like that to add to the experience, and if you remove that, somehow that makes the game worse. And I disagree with that notion. Not all friction is bad, and you need need to have some friction, but there are cases and instances where the design of something doesn't really add to anything. For Final Fantasy XIV, honestly, I think the game just kind of underutilizes things more often than not, and doesn't lean into certain pieces or ideas of gameplay, or whenever there is friction with something, they just throw it away. So they're not only getting rid of that annoying friction that I alluded to, but also some of the necessary friction that, yeah, some people may work around, but can add to the overall experience. I wish Final Fantasy XIV had some layer of customization when it comes to the gameplay. I don't need like full-blown talent trees like Path of Exile or anything like that. Just a little bit of customization I think would be appreciated. And I think over time, Final Fantasy XIV has kind of tried to deliberately chop away anything that sticks out too much and has smoothed the experience overall too much. That doesn't mean the game is too easy or too hard. It's just getting rid of all that friction when some of it should still remain. It's a case-by-case basis. I think some things need to be simplified, some things need to be streamlined, and Final Fantasy XIV has kind of done that over the years, but there are some things that shouldn't be. And that's a case-by-case basis. Next up, we have at Heath Altum 8601, who says, here's a hot take. Data center travel was a bad idea. People should only be able to go between their own data center. The travel has killed most raid PFs. I don't want to even mention how much money I lose. I feel as if we found the real reason at the end there why you don't like it. But here's the funny thing. I don't ever really use data center travel. I kind of just don't leave my realm and my data center and my server. I just don't really leave. So here's where you come in. Leave a comment down below with your thoughts on this one. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your opinions overall. Next up, we have at Pandemonium9255, who says, my hot take for the pool. Most of the zones in game are huge for absolutely no reason other than to make the world feel like a world. Why is there no exploration and treasure hunting other than vista points and treasure maps? Can we please have something to do in this world that incentivizes these things for people who want to live in the world or even roleplay? Why do we have to deal with more MacGuffins? Electrope, I mean, sigh. I already thought it was ridiculous and saw nothing else happening because we literally defeated the bird-eared eater of galaxies. We saved every planet inhabitable. Please tell me that we can possibly do greater than that. The next End of the World event will just be a copy of a DBZ saga. X gonna give it to you, comes to Aetheris to blow it up or drown it in darkness. Power beam struggle, we win next X enemy. Wash, rinse. There are a ton of temple ruins and other things we can just uncover and be excited about. Most people just flock from one point to another for something quest-based or fate-based. 99% of my server are all selling on the streets of Ul'dah. Yeah, I've kind of felt this for a while now. I feel as if Final Fantasy XIV does really underutilize its overall zone design. That's not particularly like a revelation, right? A lot of people have thought about that over the years, but I think, especially with how cool a lot of the zone design can be, and even Dawntrail was kind of a miss for me in this regard, outside of stuff like, well, the Alexandria portions. You have this really cool zone you're exploring during the main story, and then right afterwards, you don't really do much with it. It's like fates exist and hunts exist, but you don't do much with the world, and I think it is a bit of a shame. And I think this is one of the avenues that we were just kind of talking about, where Final Fantasy XIV needs more stuff that's new, that's a breath of fresh air, and I think what they can do with the overall world design and zone design is a massive avenue for that. I would love to see stuff like the content we get out of field explorations, like say Bosja or Eureka or the Occult Crescent, have some of that type of content take place in regular zones. I think that can go a long way. Final Fantasy XIV wants us to fall in love with its world, but you need to give me a reason to be in the world to fall in love with it outside of the main story, in my opinion. I think there are a bunch of different ways they can go about doing this. There's not like just one correct answer for this. But I do think this is one of those avenues that Final Fantasy XIV really needs to go down and explore and experiment with. Next up, we have at TideWatcher9962, who says, hot take, I don't care about chaotic, extreme, savage, unreal, or ultimate. I would rather see more optional, normal dungeons implemented instead, as frankly, aside from completing whatever base story for the MSQ like 7.0, the only extra dungeons we get as content, for example, was Tender Valley and Strayburrow, Deadwalk. Everything else is sadly MSQ, and I would also like to see these optional dungeons incorporate what I feel is a very underutilized mechanic in Final Fantasy XIV, that being the randomized deep dungeon floor buff debuff. Like, maybe if I enter an instance of Stray Burrow Deadwalk, it will have increased haste for all my party members. Or maybe this run will have gloom, enemies hit harder and are faster. Or maybe something entirely new like random tornado hazards that spawn and knock players up into the air. Basically something similar to Mythic Plus from World of Warcraft with its affixes. I was actually about to make that joke. Also, on that tangent about normal dungeons in general, give them multiple pathways like in Criterion dungeons. Make doing the order in different ways result in different enough boss fights to be meaningful. This goes back to that second take we were talking about. When it comes to, it's not just a matter of the content in the game being hard and complicated or too easy. It's the content itself feels way too sterile, repetitive, and samey. The most important thing in my opinion when it comes to game design is not a matter of if it's hard or easy. It's a matter of if it's engaging. You can get there in a bunch of different ways, but when we're playing a game for years and years and years on end, people have seen this show before. They have played these games before. They need something new, something fresh, something interesting. And when a new dungeon comes out that is the exact same layout that you're not gonna really do outside of expert roulette, if you do those, outside of your initial sojourn into it, people just get simply bored. They want something new and exciting, fresh. And I think the dungeon design, alongside that previous take about overall zone design and the underutilization of the open world in Final Fantasy XIV, dungeon design is another great avenue they could explore to freshen things up. Give people more of a reason to actually want to do dungeons. For people to actually be excited about dungeons again. When was the last time in a patch a new dungeon was added? Outside of like maybe Criterion dungeons and stuff like that. That you were like, oh dude, I can't wait for patch day to do this new dungeon. A lot of people just kind of view it as filler content at this point. It's extremely cookie cutter right now. And it's one of the ways we have gotten to this point in Final Fantasy XIV is because over the years, whenever stuff strayed from the status quo or the norm, people complained and said, well, this is way too different. It's way too much of a slog to do this thing. Oh, this dungeon is way too quick in comparison to the other ones. It makes me only want to do this one for the rewards because it's most efficient. And like over time, we go from having a broad range of content and it becomes this very narrow lane of stuff that has been optimized over the years to fit the feedback that they have been given. And now that we have had like this narrow lane for a long period of time, people are like, please, can we have some width to this? We want some variety again. It's an issue when it comes to feedback, and especially like MMORPGs, because they go on for so long. It's like, what's the correct answer here? Because if you do go back to like having a wide range of content, people at the end of the day, especially MMORPG players, they are goal-oriented. They are rewarded based on completion. They want to do whatever gets them the most rewards the quickest, most efficient way possible. So if you give them a bunch of different things to do, a lot of people on the whole will just naturally gravitate to whatever's quickest and easiest. It's not an easy fix, don't get me wrong, but I think the game maintaining this status quo of this hyper-formulaic design when it comes to not only job design, with stuff like the 2-minute meta, when it comes to stuff like how the open world functions, when it comes to stuff like dungeon design, when it comes to the content cadence, when it comes to these types of content that we actually get in Final Fantasy XIV. There is no easy answer. And while I can completely understand how Final Fantasy XIV got to this current position, I think it is time for a change. I don't think it's a matter of making content that is solely easy or hard. I think it's a matter of removing this feeling of the game being overly formulaic. It needs that breath of fresh air, it needs a shakeup, it needs that spark. It needs to be fun, it needs to be exciting, and you can get there in different ways. There's not like any one roadmap they have to specifically follow. I just think we need a new roadmap is all. With that, I'll call the video there for the day. Please leave a comment down below with your own hot take that you would love to see me react to in the next Final Fantasy XIV hot take video. I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear your opinions and hear your perspectives. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe while you're down there. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day, go play some video games, follow me on TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter, Jmulls G. I have a Discord in the description down below. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again!